remember standing in the kitchen. Kirk and I, we lived in one of the Parsons rooms, about 300. And I'm in the kitchen, and one of the junior high girls is talking, and I'm just kind of overhearing her. And I said, "Excuse me, what's your father do to you?" And we get, yeah, it's finally. I told the head pastor, Gail Irwin, was his name, and the Department of Children's Services came in, took him out of the home. He was clearly a danger to her. And later on, the family, the father, came to church. I was so surprised. The pastor calls the Department of Children's Services, like, "Hey, you end up coming to our church." And I was so shocked to see him there, but I was so overjoyed. I also saw some really heavy mental health issues after I was first licensed. We started Turning Point Counseling there at the church in La Puente. And one of the things that I was able to do, along with Peter Robbins, my ministry partner all these many years, was to do psychiatric evaluations. So we would go over to Queen Valley, we'd go to Chino Community Hospital, and we would consult doctors on psychiatric situations that came into the ER. So it was the very, very front line of mental health, just hardcore cases. So I can remember a lady, she was out on her honeymoon. It was going to be such a joyous time. She was looking so forward to it, and they went out on a cruise. Her husband never told her that he had bipolar disorder, and he flipped out on the cruise, right? And they couldn't get that cruise ship back to port fast enough. And he came into the ER, and I can remember asking her and saying, who did I marry, and what did I get myself into here? Poor lady. They saw me later on afterwards, and so it was quite a deal there. But truth is truly stranger than fiction. It was the slit wrist, the overdoses, the child abuse, psychosis, just on and on and on. I can tell you many, many stories about VR. So this is a challenge that we have in our churches, in our communities. Where are we at? What's the prevalence? Well, about 1 in 5 American adults, that's about 60 million people, suffer with some form of mental illness. That's where we stand today. Anxiety disorders are the most common mental health issue. It affects about 42 million Americans. And about 21 million adults have had at least one major depressive disorder. That was in the year of 2021. We have increasing levels of anxiety. It went from about 32% to 37% to 43% here this year, 2024. What were the top sources of anxiety? Number 1 was the economy. Number 2 was the 2024 election. Yeah, I think I had a little anxiety over that one too. And then the next one was current events. I would call that just listening to the news. Yeah. So, but there is some good news, and there's really some fantastic news, and that is some amazing studies on people who attend church versus people who don't attend church at all. And people who attend church have a 29% lower risk of depression than people who don't attend. Just people coming to church, just attending once a week, had 29. Probably even more surprising was that there was an 84% reduced risk of suicide. Suicide goes 84% down if you attend church versus people who don't attend church. That is amazing. And regular church attendance is associated with lower substance abuse risk and a greater life satisfaction. That's what church does, just attending church. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So if you're leading a church, I want you to know that you are driving a healing machine.
Yeah.
You're driving a Ferrari, right? and I want you to know that. I want you to have that in your heart and in your mind. You guys are doing just unbelievable things. I know from week to week, but you get the big picture. You look at this. It's really amazing. So this is part of our heritage, and way back at the church along with Eddie Romero, remember Pastor Eddie Romero? He'd sit around and he'd read Eusebius. Eusebius was a 4th century church historian. And, that's what he did for fun. So one day he says, hey, Kevin, do you know that in Egypt, Christians weren't called Christians? They were called therapeutae. They were called therapists.
Wow.
Yeah, before Christians were called Christians down in the Egypt area, the Ptolemies down there, they were called therapists because they were known for their healing power.
Wow.
If you had a problem, if you had an illness, if you had a conflict, you go find a Christian, and that's where you're going to get healing. Wow, that's amazing. That's a little gift from Eddie Romero there and him reading Eusebius there. We have that today. We had a lady one time, this is a number of years ago, but she calls up, she wants to have some marriage counseling. And I look on the kind of our little intake form, it says, referred by the evangelical preacher. So I say to her, is that your home church? She says, no. I said, what is your home church? She said, I don't have one, I don't go to church. I said, well, why would you call the church for referral to a marriage counselor? She says, because I figured I'd get a Christian. And if I got a Christian, you'd be willing to put my marriage in. We saw a psychologist in the very first session who told us we're going to get a divorce.
Wow.
So I wanted to go see a Christian. I said, well, you came to the right place. That's right. And I didn't push it, but she eventually did start going to church. So it was a great witness to her.
Yeah.
This is really what we're trying to create, Turning Point Counseling, with counselors on church campuses. When you need help, where do you go? You go to your local church.
Yeah.
There you're going to get help. That's where the help is. That's what we want to create. All right, so what is this thing, emotional health? You call it EQ, emotional quotient. This is a big thing now. In 1995, Dan Goldman wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence, EQ, and it just rocked around the world. It was like the biggest thing ever, EQ. We know what IQ is, intellectual quotient. EQ, emotional quotient. Wow, what is that? This is like a new thing, right? So the intelligence scale, the IQ, really only measures a very, very small portion of human intelligence. In fact, in the most robust test, there's only 11 subtests. There's block design and sentence completion and general funded knowledge. We find things like that in the testing. So it doesn't test for street smarts or musicality or athleticism or just many, many other facets of humanity. But so the EQ came out, and the EQ, the emotional quotient of a person, is the #1 best predictor of marital success.
Wow.
If you have two people that are emotionally healthy, the chances of that marriage succeeding, and we want to succeed, we want to thrive, provide and thrive together. It's going to be good. It's going to be really good. Yeah. EQ is also the #1 best predictor of career success. If you have good EQ, you're probably going to be very successful at your job and at your career. There's an outfit out of Texas, and they claim that they can tell whether an employee is going to be successful on the job before you hire them. Before you hire them, what? Because that hire is very costly for a company. It's really only looking for one thing: emotional health, EQ. So what is this EQ stuff? Well, at the very top of the list is empathy. Can you feel and understand what another person, can you get into their shoes? Kind of sounds like being incarnational, right? Like Jesus, right? And the greatest statement on empathy is do unto others as you'd have them do. It doesn't get any better than that. Yeah. I mean, that was the ultimate statement on empathy. But it also has to do with self-regulation. Can you have delayed gratification? When you hear, can you get bad news? Can you cool your jets? Are you a hothead? Or can you control your emotions? It's the ability to lead, to follow, for social engagement, and to pursue a meaningful life. So this EQ thing, for us Christians, It kind of sounds vaguely familiar. The Apostle Paul, he had all these laundry lists of character qualities, and it's throughout all of his writings, right? What's the most famous laundry list of the Apostle Paul? It's Galatians 5. It's the fruit of the Spirit. Right? Love, joy, peace. The very last was self-control. That has to do with self-regulation. And so it's scattered all through Colossians 3, abstain from sexual immorality, purity, lust, evil desire, and greed. Clothe yourself with kindness, gentleness, and patience, right? So what I want to tell you, that my second point to you is that EQ is right in your hand. It's right in the Bible, right? We've been teaching this a long time, before 1995 with Goldman, and we want to capitalize on it. We are helping people be emotionally healthy. We're teaching virtues, we're teaching values, right and wrong. And I've got to tell you, when I work with people, I work with all kinds of people from all over the world, Christians, non-Christians, and there's a famous family therapist, she's passed away, Sue Johnson, and she said, we now have communities of two. We now have communities of two. It's just two people living together that really aren't connected with anybody else. Mm-hmm. And it's just not a Christian community, but there are many, many people who that is their experience. And I say to them, well, do you have any friends? Do you have any relatives? Do you have any, like, do you go to the gym? You go to hear music or you work out, No, nothing. It's just the two people. It's just so isolated. It's incredibly isolated. So, and we know this, that when we get isolated, it destroys our mental health, our ability. And of course, the big social experiment that we had was COVID, right? And how did we do with that? Oh man, it was just absolutely devastating. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Third thing I want to share with you guys today is, in terms of having an emotionally healthy church, is for you to become as emotionally healthy as you possibly can, to invest in you. And one of the greatest tasks in the road to sanctification is figuring out what's selfishness, good stewardship, right? So many Christians get mixed up with that. No, it's good stewardship to take care of you, to invest in you. It's really, really important. I've been privileged to work with some of the greatest leaders and from all over, and they shamelessly seek out help. I mean, they are just aggressive. I mean, if there's something out there, they swallow it up. They go for it. So investing in your own emotional health is so important. And here's my statement on it. Your emotional health can be a catalyst or a governor on the emotional health of your congregation. Mm-hmm. Your personal emotional health can be a catalyst, grow it, blow it up, or it can be a lid, a governor on the health of your congregation. I've seen this over and over and over again. Many, many years ago, in a place far away, you wouldn't know this person. You guys were laughing about, knowing each other and stuff. But it was way back in our day, so several decades ago. And the people who would come to us from this one particular church were abused. I mean, pretty severely. And so Peter Robbins and I would sit there and kind of scratch, what's going on? What's the deal with this? So the pastor came and saw me, and he did a deep dive, and he let Jesus into some places in his life that had been closed up his entire life. His mother would grab his father by the ankles and drag him down the stairs, and his head would go boing, boing, boing down the stairs, and she'd drag him out in the tree on the front lawn. He was stone drunk. He was drunk. And the kids would come out from school. School yard was about 2 houses down. And there was a sense of just shame, embarrassment, and dread that he grew up with. His brothers and sisters joined the Hells Angels, and they were drunk. And he became a raging fire and brimstone pastor. You know, off it came, man. That was his expression. And so we did a lot of very, very, very deep inner healing with him for a good while. And so one day he draws this poster, and the poster says, "Be a free, spontaneous child," with big starburst. And he puts it right next to his desk. And all the people from the church come in and look at it and go, what has happened to pastor, you know? I mean, be a free, spontaneous child? What happened to the brimstone and all the rules, you know? And then this pastor did the unforgivable. And it was unforgivable to some people. He got up in the pulpit and he preached on the love and the grace and forgiveness of Jesus Christ.
Wow.
And just set so many people free. But there was a church split. So I mean, there were those that really wanted the old guard and the old way, but they did recover, and I will forever remember his smile. He's not with us any longer, but just the joy that he had in healing and in his own emotional health, and it just led the church and opened them to incredible healing. Early in my Christian life, I read the book Ordering Your Private World. Does anybody remember that by Gordon MacDonald? Yes, some of you guys remember that. So I think that's the first book I read where he's got a pie chart, you know, and you got all the quadrants of your life, your academic life, your spiritual life, your physical life, your marital life, your social life. And you know, that got me going. I think I have a balanced life. Challenged me to look at that. So things like that. So investing in you, hey, it's your own therapy, your own healing. Maybe it's workshops. Maybe it's it's the basics of diet, exercise, reading the Word, hanging out with your spouse. I don't watch too many sports, but I have to admit that I'm just absolutely fascinated with sports psychology. So I zero in on some of these athletes, and it's just amazing how they do what they do. And I've got an athlete right now who's a would-be Olympian, and he's on fire. I think he's going to make it. I think he's going to do incredibly well. But great people and great performers are obsessed with the fundamentals. They are absolutely obsessed with the fundamentals. I mean, it might take them a year to figure out how to do a push-up just right. Or the musician who plays that scale forwards and backwards and upside down and all around. They are obsessed with the fundamentals. And they go after it aggressively. I'm thinking of Darrelle Revis. Anybody know Darrelle Revis, football player? Oh man, they did an interview with him. And when all the other football players are off on vacation, he's reinventing himself, Revis 2.0. You know, every basic move is retooled and put back into motion. Wow, that is so good. And that's what we need to do. That's all of us who are leading others. So I wake up every morning, I have my quart of liquid water with turmeric and ginger, you know, I mean, that kind of stuff. It's those little things like that just that can really make the difference. So investing in you is so important. I got to go back and work with a very dear mentor of mine, Dr. Richard Lamb. He's probably the greatest trauma therapist in the world. And he's 89 years old. And he's got more energy than I do. I mean, it's just like, wow, you are amazing. So I had a few sessions with him. It was really fantastic. All right, next point, fourth point for you is to have an emotionally healthy church, it is imperative that you're a transparent pastor, right? Appropriately. Of course, you don't say everything, but can I be a Christian and be human at the same time? And so some people get the feeling, the pastor doesn't have any problems, and so I got to be able to walk 15 feet off the ground, this kind of thing. In the therapy world, it's not professional to talk about yourself. They came to talk about them, but there is an exception to the rule. And where do therapists talk about themselves the most? What population do you talk the most with? Victims. People who've been victimized, right? They are convinced that they are the only one. Wow. They're a freak of nature, And nobody else has the problems that I have. So when we self-disclose, it's a helpful and it's a healing thing. And self-disclose appropriately. My fifth point to you today is promote community as deeply as you possibly can. Promote community as deeply as you possibly can. When we want to torture a human being, what do we do to them? We put them in solitary confinement. And there we struggle for our sanity. We go out of our minds. It is really hard to keep our sanity. And so the opposite is also true. If you get highly integrated and you have a good circle of friends and you are very, very well connected, great association with longevity of life, right? Netflix did their documentary on living to 100, right? And what was one of the biggest common denominators? It was friends. It was people who had friends. He went down to Costa Rica, and they showed Costa Rica, and there's this cowboy guy, and he's on his horse, he's herding the cattle, and the journalist goes up to him, and he says, we're coming back to visit the blue zones. That's the 5 places in the world people live to be over 100. And he says, do you know anybody here who's 100 years of age or older? You know anybody? And the guy says, yeah, me. I'm over 100. They're riding his horse. You're over 100. Wow. Okay. Wow, that's really amazing. So in these 5 places, these blue zones, this is National Geographic identify these places. This is what we find. Having really good, strong community is a powerful thing. A lot of times people come to counseling and they have obsessive thinking. And let's talk about that for just a minute. If you're a pastor, if you're a leader, if you're an entrepreneur, there's just a lot of things in the world where you have to be obsessive, right? If you're going to be a musician, you're going to be a business owner, you have to have an obsessive mind. And I always say that the obsessive mind is like a jet engine. You just need to make sure it's bolted to the plane, right? If you take care of your mind, it'll take you around the world. But if you don't take care of it, it'll turn on you, and your thoughts and the 4 walls are a bad combination, right? So, what is the fastest way to break up obsessive thought for someone who's struggling with obsessions? Human dialogue. Human dialogue. Super quick. Man, it's hard to keep a rant going on inside your mind when you're talking to another person. You're going to look pretty strange, right? No, you have to keep them engaged, even if you're not talking about whatever the quote-unquote problem or challenge, whatever it might be, is. So human connection is just absolutely incredible. All right, how are we doing on time? We're doing pretty good?
About 5 minutes left.
Okay, so I have a niece, I have a nephew, and then my son all went into this program at New Life Church in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And it's called 24/7. And it's kind of like boot camp meets seminary for 1 year. Okay, so it was this hard workout thing. Somebody said that's harder than military boot camp. And they worked out a lot. And they studied the Word all day long. And then they have 2 big missionary trips. And the year, once to Mexico and once someplace else. So my niece went through it, my nephew did, and then my son went through it as well too. And so I came out, I don't know if it was for his graduation, it was probably for his graduation, but 4 months before I came out, there was a massive fall by the pastor, Ted Haggard. And this is a mega church. This is one of these churches where like the church is planted here, and all around is nothing but parking lot. It's like 10,000 members. It's just this mammoth, stadium seating, kind of place. So I'm coming in 4 months later, and I'm thinking, this is gonna be a ghost town. And it wasn't just a local; it was national. It was all over the national radio and TV and the whole thing. And so I get there. And it's just full. The whole church, it's just, whoa. So I found one of the elders and I said, attendance? How? She says, no, man, everybody's here. I said, what about giving? He says, maybe down just a little bit, not much. I said, what's going on? How did this happen? He says, well, Pastor Ted, in spite of all of his problems, he wrote this book, and the name of the book's Dog Training, Fly Fishing, and Sharing Christ in the 25th Century, and by Ted Haggard. And he says, we built the church on our small groups. And in groups of similar interests, these kind of things. So I said, well, man, I gotta get this book. So I went to look for the book, been taken off all the shelves. Now this guy's, he reprimand went on. And so I bought it on Amazon for $1.50. But it was just fascinating that a church of that size could survive something that massively damaging. And your best friends are still at the church. So you keep going to the church. I would just, it really struck me. All right, a couple more things. I know we got to wrap up here. So building community, this can be camping, right? I don't know if you know this, but the number one favorite memory of the American family is camping, right? Because this is where you have, in psychology, they call it, they call it foxhole relationships. How do you get two people or a group of people together really deep, really fast, really intense? It is literally the foxhole of war, where you're covering each other's backside. It's dependency upon each other to survive, the danger, sense of danger, and the unknown. You put those elements together, and you're going to develop relationships really, really quick. Kirk, do you remember we take these kids backpacking up in San Gregorio? Fortunately, we all lived through it. We do winter camping. We go walking out on these lakes up there and all this stuff. I look back on it now and go, it's kind of dangerous. But we didn't know any better back then. I was about 24 years old. So, but in youth ministry, we call it friendship evangelism. So, hey, we go to Catalina, or we go down and build a house in Mexico. We're going to build relationships really deep, really fast. So anything that you can do, think about how can we create community super deep, super fast, and over the long term. And then my sixth point is offering resources, build relationships with Christian counselors. That's what Turning Point Counseling is all about. And you can introduce them periodically at the service. That's always a great thing. We had our office manager was Sherry Ross. You may know her. She was in the ED-free late counseling program. But we took her picture and we put it on our website, right? And just a little picture. And our instincts went up. Like, whoa, what happened? She has this very engaging, I could talk to that person. Mm-hmm. Wow. And years ago, we had a radio show on KKLA for about 10 years. And whenever they had books on recovery and healing, the publishers would always require that a picture of the author was on it, because people relate to pictures. So introducing therapists and having programs, asking them to speak, those things are really important. And then, of course, my seventh point is implementing church programs. There's a lot of them out there, and you guys have all heard of Celebrate Recovery, Divorce Care, Grief Share. My son's former youth pastor, Robert Crosby, he and his wife Lori, they just created a new program called Reach Hurting Kids Institute. And it's called Trauma Informed Children's Ministry. Mm-hmm. So Robert, he's a smart guy. He went on to Cal Baptist, and I think he got a Ph.D. in counseling psychology, I think. But he teaches statistics. He's one of those guys. His wife's an MFT, and they have a ministry to help kids who have been injured in the church. Mm-hmm. All right, I know we're short here. Let me wrap up with a scripture that you all know, and I want us to think about it just in light of mental health for just a moment. Romans chapter 2, you know it well. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not be conformed to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That sounds like mental health right there, the renewing of your mind. That you may be able to test and prove what God's will is good, pleasing, and perfect will. 15 years old. Appreciate you guys, love what you do, supporting you. Many of you have been very, very gracious in sending people to Turning Point and even off to help pay, and it's well felt and really, really appreciated. So, great job with that. Great.